Aquaponics is taking over the Caribbean. Where are you? Are you on the train? Hi everybody, welcome again to another episode of Fish Keeping Jamaica. Welcome to my channel. Okay, so I am still in the Aquaponics series, and this is like an impromptu video because coincidentally there is a webinar being held online with a group that I'm associated with, Caribbean Aquaculture, and the chairperson or person in charge is Dr. Russell. You have seen several videos in which I've done with Dr. Russell. She's based in Europe right now, but she's a Jamaican. And there is a webinar with Maya from, I think it's Barbados, one of those small islands, that will be sharing island school aquaponics system setup. And you'll see the reason why I'm enthused about this. As I said before, aquaponics, right? Yeah, aquaponics, yeah, it's a fever and it's gathering momentum throughout the Caribbean. Where do you stand regarding that? Stay tuned.
Parts of the world joining us today. I hope you find this talk interesting. Basically, all I intend to do today is just introduce myself through the work that I'm currently doing. So I will tell you guys a little bit about where I work here at the Island School and some of the work that is happening here. So yeah, I'll start. Just for a little bit of context, the Island School is located in the Bahamas. So we start off with the US over here, and then we come down to this tiny island here and go all the way to the southern tip, and that's where the Island School is. So just for a little bit of a zoom in, the way it's set up, we have our main campus located where the pin says Island School. That's where most of our academic activities would happen. And over on the southern part of campus, so that's towards the bottom of the picture, you will see a wet lab and the Cape Eleuthera Institute, and that is where most of our research happens. So the work that I'm doing is happening at the Institute. It is literally a 5-minute walk away, but it appears a lot further in this map. So just a little bit of context about the Island School. So it's an institute of research and development, which has an experiential learning basis. So what that means is they typically don't follow a traditional school curriculum of a classroom setting. Most of our programs happen outdoors in the field, very practical. So there are several programs running concurrently, and then they all interconnect at some point. So as part of the Island School, there is an elementary and a middle school for children from ages 5 to about 12. Then we have a semester program, which runs 3 times a year, each time for about 100 days at a time. That's where we have typically high school students coming in from mostly the US, but from some other parts, and they spend 100 days here. During that time, they work alongside the researchers and they do research projects with us. There's also a visiting program that is always ongoing, and that's where groups come from different parts of the world, different age groups, different sizes for different lengths of time, and they come here to immerse themselves in whatever work we're doing as it interests them. But at its core, sustainability pretty much drives the mission of the Island School. And as such, a lot of the research that is being done here focuses on things like renewable energy. We look at things like waste management, food security, in addition to fisheries and coastal protection, and a lot of marine work is also done here. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot of interconnection between the research that is happening here. So The Center for Sustainable Development is a small department of the research team. And here I think the work that we do forms a very critical part of how the island school operates, because basically it's this isolated community in the south of a remote island. And we try as much as possible to live a life that is as sustainable as we can. As a result, we try to produce a certain percentage of the food that we eat as much as we can. We try as much as possible to limit our environmental impacts, be it through the work that we do, but also through the inevitable need for importation. We generate a lot of waste on campus, and so we try as much as possible to process that waste. The majority of the waste that we get here is cardboard waste, because we import a lot of stuff in boxes from Amazon and other such places. And so a major research stream here is waste management, where we try to first sort all the waste on campus and then process it, recycle, and utilize things in different ways. So one quick example would be taking cardboard, shredding it, and using that either in composting or for mulching our farm area. So that is just one small example of how we try to integrate things like that. Another critical ongoing research area here is permaculture, and that's where we integrate agricultural farming with environmental restoration. So we have a little bit of livestock farming happening here. We also have a farm and an orchard where we, one, try to produce a certain level of food, but also help with processing some of our waste streams. So another quick example, when I do a fish harvest, for instance, we typically fillet the tilapia. The carcasses from that would then get brought to the orchard and buried under trees and act as fertilizer. So again, just a small interconnection. Another research stream here is mycology, which is quite interesting because here we use waste to produce not only mushrooms, but also composites or materials for other uses. So for instance, in growing mushroom on cardboard, we're able to make model furniture out of the substrate that is left behind after the mushroom is produced. And lastly, and I would like to think most importantly, is aquaponics, where we have a system on campus that produces food. It's a freshwater recirculating system, again, in keeping with the whole theme of sustainability. We're trying to limit the amount of water that we're using, the amount of environmental impacts we have through farming of both fish and vegetables. So just a quick, what is aquaponics for people who don't know? It's a combination of aquaculture, which would be the growth of aquatic plants and animals in a controlled environment. And then you have hydroponics, which would be the soilless cultivation of plants. You combine those, you get aquaponics. So basically how it works, it's a recirculating system. Typically you start with a fish tank with fish, and between the feed that is given to the fish, the waste that they produce, and eaten feed, we have ammonia being produced. Through the miracle of the nitrogen cycle, that ammonia gets converted into nitrates, which is a plant available nutrient that is highly demanded, especially for your leafy greens and stuff like that. So we're able to grow a lot of lettuce in our system. That water, because the lettuce have now, or whichever plants you're growing have been able to take up these nitrates, it makes the water clean enough to go back to your fish. And then that way you're able to recirculate and use a lot of the same water. And that is very important in a place like this, because the Bahamas, if people do not know, it's a coral-based country. Many of the islands have very limited freshwater supplies. We have access to some wells that give us some fresh water, but for the most part, we have to be as conservative as we can. And so a system like this works very well. So the fish we grow here is tilapia. We chose tilapia for a number of reasons. As most people in aquaculture would know, they grow very quickly, they reproduce very easily in a captive environment. They're very hardy fish. And well, of course, we love the fact that they're freshwater and they're very tolerable of our climate. So just to give you some quick stats on the first quarter of this year, the harvest that we would have done. So we harvested a little over almost 70 kilos of fish in January. In February, it was a little lower because we had less people on campus at the time. In March, it went back up to about 40. So, and at the top there, see a picture of the fish that we have. So typically we have a mix of the gift tilapia. Those are the more dark colored ones that you're seeing. And then of course we have some of the red hybrid, and then they have also been interbreeding. And so we have some mixtures of the both, but that's typically what our system is stocked with. As it relates to our crops, we grow primarily lettuce. That is because there is a kitchen or a dining hall on campus that provides 3 meals a day to all staff and students. And our crops, we grow primarily lettuce. That is because there is a kitchen or a dining hall on campus that provides 3 meals a day to all staff and students. And the salad bar requires a lot of greens. And so we produce the majority of the greens that go there. So we grow a few different varieties of lettuce, as you can see in the picture on the top right, just to, I guess, keep the salad bar exciting, but also we like to compare different varieties and see what works best with our climate at different times of the year. We also grow basil, again, which is used in the kitchen. They make a pesto and other salad dressings with it. We grow some microgreens, we grow some mint, tomatoes, cucumbers. We also do quite a bit of other herbs, such as chives, cilantro. We also experiment with some Swiss chard, some Asian greens. We would have just introduced those in the summer, so I don't really have stats on those just yet. But this is just a quick graph to show you again what we produced this year. Just to explain a little bit, the blue bars, which would be lettuce, are represented on the right axis, and everything else is on the left. So lettuce, for example, in March, we would have harvested almost 150 kilograms of lettuce alone, and then everything else. So yeah, just a bit of context. Also a lot of cherry tomatoes, which the kitchen loves. So just to give you a little bit of context for like some of the work that has been done, I've been here a year and a half. So in that year and a half, I have done 2 research classes with students and just a little bit of the work that the students would have done. So we would have recognized that the hydroponic unit of the aquaponics section, the aquaponics system at the island school, is typically a deep water culture system. That system would have been in existence for at least the last 15 years. It consists of 5 troughs, and anybody who knows anything about hydroponics, aquaponics would know that deep water culture systems are the most highly water demanding types of systems. So the idea was to test out a system that would utilize a significantly lower amount of water and see if a system like that could work here. The reason why we were potentially doubtful that it may not work is because deep water culture systems have the advantage of a raft as well as a large volume of water to provide insulation for your plants. And in a place like this where it's really hot and really exposed, we thought that maybe the trying to convert to anything using less water might potentially put our plants under more stress. But they decided to try out NFT technique. That is where you grow plants in pipes. So they would have set up a little trial system over one of the existing raceways, ran a pump from the raceway into the NFT pipes and back down. And they carried that out over the course of their semester, so about a 2-month period. And in doing that, they found that the NFT system actually outperformed the deep water culture system. So they found that plants grew faster, they had larger yields at the end of the day, and ultimately you have lower water requirements. And so what that would have meant for us is that if we were able to convert all of the aquaponics raceways in the island school from deep water culture to nutrient film technique or using the pipes, we would, one, be able to use a lot less water to produce the same number of plants that we were currently producing. But also we recognized that by going vertical, we were able to almost double the volume of plants produced in the same space, which would have then made the system even more efficient. And then 3, if we now do that, it would give us space in those raceways to do other things. And our thought is that we could potentially convert those into ponds for growing prawns. So we're still looking into that, but those were the implications of that first research project. But then in trying to figure out why exactly the NFT system would have done better than the deep water culture system, it was hypothesized that it had something to do with the oxygen levels and how much oxygen was being provided to the plants. And so in my subsequent class, the students decided to build on that and to determine whether by improving the oxygen levels in the deep water culture raceways, whether that would now have any significant impact on the yields that they would have gotten from the same crops that we use in the first study. And so what they did would have been to enhance the aeration system in one of the raceways, restock it, and then again compare plant growth in an old raceway versus the one that they modified. And then having done that, they recognized that yes, by improving the aeration, we have been able to significantly improve our yield, and they did result in yields that were somewhat comparable to that of the nutrient film technique. That being done now, we have to debate whether we invest in doing the conversion to nutrient film technique, or do we just maintain the raceways as we have them with enhanced aeration and still get improved yields. I think ultimately the decision might still be to do the full conversion, given that we're able to increase the volume of crops that we grow and also provide us the opportunity to grow other things in the system. So those would have been like the research projects that have been done with students. On my own, a major research project that would have just started a few months ago and is still ongoing is us recognizing the fact that in general in aquaculture, not just in the Bahamas, throughout the Caribbean region, it was identified that for one, feed is the most expensive production cost, and the fact that we don't really produce much fish feed in the region, so most of it has to be imported. And that has proven to be a major deterrent to farmers in general. It has resulted in farmers either using alternative, less than ideal feed options. For instance, in Dominica, I know they use chicken feed for aquaculture. So recognizing that fish feed or aqua feeds was a limitation in the region, one, and also recognizing that at the island school, in as much as we aim to be sustainable and to reduce our impacts on the environment, having to import all the feed that runs the system is not the most sustainable thing. And so if we're able to somehow produce a feed locally using ingredients that are all locally sourced and thereby reducing the need for as much importation, that would potentially enhance not only our sustainability as a school system here, but also make aquaculture more accessible to farmers if we're able to come up with something that they can now access wherever they're based. So a lot of research has been done on alternative ingredients that can be used as substitutes for the traditional aquafeed ingredients based on work that has been done in other parts of the world and what we know about certain ingredients. So we looked into a lot of locally available starches, locally available protein sources, and we came up with a list of about 10 different ones. And so currently we're in the process of gathering up a lot of these ingredients to start formulating some kind of feeds and then running some trials and seeing what works. And hopefully by the end of the year, we could have something to report to farmers or at least to the scientific community about a potential alternative to feed for aquaculture uses. What that would then mean is that one, we're potentially reducing the cost for production if we're able to source these things, formulate a feed, and make that formulation something that is more affordable than simply ordering feed from somewhere else. And hopefully that would now make aquaculture more accessible to farmers, not only here, but also throughout the Caribbean region. Another project that we have ongoing is looking at tilapia phenotypes and seeing which might work best in our climate. So in the system, I mentioned earlier that we have mostly the red hybrid tilapia and the gift. Recently, we would have acquired some fresh genetic material from a hatchery located in West Coast, Florida. That one is a bit of a hybrid, I guess, between the Oreochromis nightingale and the aureus. That one has been selectively bred over years by an expert fish breeder / geneticist who is trying to optimize fish for faster growth, but he has also bred them in such a way that the fish itself is more white than red or black. And the intent there is that you get a more presentable skin-on fillet at the end of your growth cycle. So we recently acquired some of those, I would say about 2 months ago. And so I have been comparing them with the fish that we have in our system here to see which ones actually perform best in our climate. My rationale was that as much as these fish would have been selectively bred to optimize their growth rates, given that the fish that we have in our system have been here for a while and they potentially may have acclimatized a bit to the conditions here, they may have selectively bred themselves into being a more superior breed for our environment here. So I have just started this research project. Literally this morning, I collected week 4 data. According to this preliminary data, it looks like the fish that I brought in are outperforming the ones that we have here. It could be one due to the genetics. It may also be a result of inbreeding happening in our system here. We're not sure yet. We're still looking into it, but this is some ongoing work that is happening here. And yeah, that's pretty much all I had prepared to talk about today. And I thank you all for listening, and I welcome any questions, concerns, thoughts that you may have.
Thank you so much, Maya. Does anyone have any questions? You can either raise your hands, turn on your video, or put them in the chat. And thank you for joining from Mexico, from around the Caribbean, St. Lucia, Anguilla, Kenya. We welcome you. So please feel free hi, Andrew. Thanks for joining us again. Please feel free to give us any questions. The website is at the very top. It's the Caribbean Aquaculture Hub.com. And we're not yet a nonprofit. We will be in the future. Any questions from Maya? Any questions about aquaponics, making feed, the island school?
Hi.
Hi.
This is
Sorry, I had my hand.
Leon.
Okay, sorry. Who are we talking to? Valerie.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi.
I just want to commend Maya on an excellent presentation and want to encourage her in her research. I think this is very good, not just for the school, but very good for the Caribbean in general. The only question that I have, since this is new to me, I was assuming, and I need you to tell me if I am wrong, that these are genetically modified fish. So correct me if I'm wrong. This is the only observation that I've made.
They have been, so the tilapia would have originated in the Nile River in Africa, and over years, people have recognized their prowess and how ideal they are for growth in cultured environments. However, for different reasons, people, I guess, may have found certain traits of theirs to be less than ideal. And so over the years, they would have developed, like the one in the picture there, you could see a red color. That is not the natural color of the tilapia, but they would have bred 2 different strains. So the Niloticus, which is the black one, and then the Mozambicus, which is like a black with red. And then these would have been genetically bred and selected until they developed this red strain, which people then found to be a bit more appealing. And other such strains have been developed over the years to optimize for different traits, be it for heat tolerance, be it for faster growth, etc. But yeah, they are a bit modified.
Davy?
Thank you, Maya. Can I have a son? Oh,
You can go ahead.
Hi, good day. Hi, good day.
Hi.
So I'm Davy from St. Lucia. First of all, I'd like to thank Maya for an excellent presentation. My interest in aquaponics have developed and grown over the last 3 years. First of all, I am a fisher, one of the few fisher women in St. Lucia. I actually go out to sea.
Welcome. We want to hear your
thank you.
story. We want to hear more about you.
There's a lot to be told, I can assure you. Also, when the pandemic happened and we were somewhat restrained from fishing in St. Lucia, I also started a farm, which is doing very well. But since we collect a lot of data on our boats. So we're one of the few boats that go out with things like GPS, plot where we catch fish, be able to collect data and statistics. And I have wanted to do aquaponics for a while, to the point where an uncle of mine and I had started this tiny project to be able to see how it worked, and on a very small scale. And I'm not sure why, but I have actually spoken to the head of our fisheries department on more than one occasion. I was told that somebody would do a technical audit. So I'm at a point where I don't know where to start. I've actually done courses online, free and paid, in aquaponics to be able to enlighten myself, because as you're aware, we have a scarcity of fishing in St. Lucia. And I believe sooner or later, our palates will have to change to be able to discern to freshwater fish, because there's not enough fishing, either due to global warming or the poor management of the fishing resources in St. Lucia. The reefs are overfished. There's so many different things that I see when I go out, which I know is contributing towards even the sargassum seaweed. That has had a major impact on fishing in St. Lucia. So really, first of all, I just want to say I'm really excited that I got to be part of this, and I'm hoping that I can continue or follow or get more information. But really, my question is, as I know you're not in St. Lucia, but as somebody who has the resources and has the land to be able to do this, and which is something you find it's not very common. Most times people don't have this. Where do I start to be able to start aquaponics, and even to possibly work with other people who don't have the resources that I have to be able to start something here in St. Lucia? So that's my question to you.
Can I ask you which area you're based in?
I'm based in Vieux-Fort. I'm in the south of the island. And I am heavily involved in fishing, particularly when it comes to women. So if I were to get a group of women who are willing to go into this with me, I would wholeheartedly pour my heart into it.
Okay. I guess you probably wouldn't know. Have you heard of someone named Jameson Alphonse?
No, not at all, no. The only person I knew was a Vitalis man who started doing a project in Vieux-Fort as well. But he's a businessman who had an interest in it. But I don't know of any commercial aquaponics people in St. Lucia.
Okay. My email address is in the chat. If you send me an email, I could put you in touch with Jameson. But just to answer your question, where to start? I mean, if you already have land access, you could probably source tilapia either from the ministry or probably from another farmer who has it. I guess the main thing would be probably learning a bit more about aquaponics itself in terms of the technicals behind running a system, which isn't very hard, but it's very intricate. So it requires you to know exactly what you're doing. It's helpful if there's a person on the ground who could coach you. And I think Jameson would be the best person to do that. He's been running an aquaponic system in Choiseul for a while now. I think at least 5 years.
The gentleman in Choiseul. Okay, I don't know his name, but somebody from
I could definitely connect you with him. He would definitely be willing and able to.
Doesn't the Food and Agricultural Organization, don't they have a lot of information on their website?
I can also share with you a handbook on aquaponics.
Sourcing the information for aquaponics isn't the problem at the moment for me. It's getting the technical assistant to just start.
Yeah,
that is the issue. And I have reached out to 2 people in the ministry. One person said they would have, but that was over a year ago. So for me, it's the technical part of it.
So are you saying, David, that the ministry in St. Lucia does not have the technical know-how or capability of assisting in setting up an aquaponics farm?
Well, I wouldn't go as far to say that they don't know, but I have not been able to get help from them, because even after discussion personally with the chief fisheries officer, she had put me in touch with another officer who was meant to get in touch to help me. And I don't know if there are many people that have speciality in that field. I am not sure. I'm just saying I have not been able to get that kind of assistance thus far. So I came on here because I just wanted to get some direction.
Right.
But I think it's the way to go. I think in terms of food security, even in terms of how our crops are affected by weather, by different things. There's so many things that we can put in place with aquaponics that can give us a more controlled environment. And with the change in weather, I don't know if everybody else is expert, but it's like we don't have seasons anymore.
Right.
So everything's changing.
Much
I've
hotter.
had 4 crops. Not only that, too, I've had so many crops of mangoes that have been affected. Looks like I'll have mangoes for so everything is changing. And that's why I think aquaponics would be a good way to be able to help reduce our food import bill. And if I can just be a small part of that, I would be quite excited. And my fishing days are getting numbered as well, because it's become such a costly thing with the price of fuel going up, and you really go out and there is no fish. And now they're instituting the economic zones for fishing too. So we're not able to cross boundaries, or we get in legal trouble. And there really isn't that much fish for the number of fisher people who go out.
Yeah. So I think what we will do, Dave, is that Maya and I will try to put together a list of resources so that we can put this on our newsletter. Please subscribe to our newsletter. I just posted.
I already have.
So we'll put this together, and you can contact us personally, and we will try to see what we can do. Before other people can leave, I wanted to address some other questions. Let's see, 1 second. What is the size of your aquaponic farm and fish tanks? How do you regulate the reproduction or growth of the fish population?
All right, so the size, we have 5 raceways. Each of them are about, well, actually, let me start with the fish tank. So we have the capacity to grow about 2,000 fish. Right now, we have it stocked at about half of that, just to accommodate for power outages and stuff like that. In terms of water, in terms of raceways, like the U-shaped thing that you see there, we have 5 of those. Each of those holds about 800 plants. In terms of breeding and how we control it, the easiest thing to do would be to try to keep only male fish in your tanks. That's the simplest way to control your breeding. That is kind of what we did for a while, but then when we lost our brood stock, we stopped being so selective about it and just allowed the fish to breed in their tanks, but then every month or so pull out the fry so as not to have an overstocking of fish in tanks. That is definitely not the best way to do it. That is very labor intensive and tiring, but yeah, the best thing would be to keep your grow out tank stocked with only male fish. I guess only female, but the male ones grow faster, and then you try to isolate your breeding to just one small section of your system, if you can do that.
Okay. Next question. What have been the biggest challenges due to the local climate? Have you seen a big climate change?
So our lettuce production drops almost to nothing in the summer months. That has been the biggest issue that I've experienced here in the Bahamas doing it. In other places, it hasn't been as much because I guess the seasonal variations haven't been that drastic. But here, I think, I don't know, probably because of the topography as well, it's just very flat and very hot and dry. And so the heat has been the biggest limitation that we have. So on this system that they've introduced a water chiller. It's a very expensive piece of equipment that helps to keep the water cool. We also installed a lot of shade cloths. So right now, well, in the picture there on the left, you can kind of see a flash net there. That one is like a 50% shade. We've changed that to an 80% just to help in the summer months, try to keep things a bit cooler. So we have some production happening, but it is noticeably less. That's where we now have to consider switching what we grow, our species selection. So going away from lettuce, which tends to be a bit more susceptible to the heat, and then we're experimenting with different types of greens now that may be a bit more tolerant, like kale or some Asian greens. And we'll see how these respond to the heat compared to the lettuce. Fish don't care. The tilapia doesn't care.
That's why they're so hardy. That's the best fish for the Caribbean.
But they breed better now that it's hotter.
Right, right. How difficult is it to get the fish shipped to other Caribbean countries?
From the US, it's pretty easy, I think. From what I found, the logistics get more challenging as we try to localize it more. I just had the most ridiculous experience in the Bahamas where I brought in some fish from Florida, no problem. And then trying to send it from the island I'm on to the capital took almost a month and multiple trips to the airport and changes of container. It was the most difficult process. But it's typically quite easy. The hatchery that I would have gone to, they are able to package fish and they ship as far as Guyana, Suriname. He shipped some to Suriname when I was there, and he ships up the entire east coast of the US, and these fish are packaged to travel for up to 72 hours. So getting fish is not really hard, and he has relationships with a lot of the major airlines. That's if you want to bring them in from somewhere else. Most islands have like government hatcheries that typically provide tilapia, as far as I know, for free even to farmers. I don't know if that has changed, but I know in St. Lucia for sure, you used to be able to get tilapia from the ministry. Yeah, that's pretty much that. And once you have them, then you have them.
Have you tried dynamic root floating technique?
Dynamic root floating technique. I don't think I'm familiar with that one.
That's Laura. Laura, did you want to ask about that? If she's still with us, I'm not sure. Okay.
Yes, I am here.
Oh,
It's
hi.
just my the English is very bad. It's a technique that allows to reduce the aeration in the raft. If you want, I can share some information about this technique with you.
Yes,
Okay.
please. Can you put it in the chat?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you so much. Crystal is from St. Lucia. She has her own aquaculture farm and she supplies commercial, but her issue is with feed for tilapia and prawns. Do you have any advice for me?
Hopefully soon I might have something that you can adopt, but as far as I know, the situation in St. Lucia is that farmers typically they use chicken feed, or I know the ministry, like they had the feed thing in Union, they used to make some aquaculture feed. I don't know if they still do that. For the prawns, I know farmers in Dominica mix up what they feed them, so they introduce things like fruits and fish offal, like scraps from fisheries and stuff like that. They find that helps grow them up faster. I guess you just need to be a bit careful with that and fouling up your water too much, so try not to add too much at a time. For now, importing is what we have to resort to. From what I have been reading, some local things you could probably find around like cassava leaves and sweet potato leaves. Apparently prawns and fish eat that in a bind. We're also exploring things like insect larvae, and these I know for sure have shown some good results, even used just in their raw state. So you could probably, if you want to explore these kinds of options, but for now it's tight.
Okay. How does the cost of producing tilapia as a protein source compare to other sources of animal protein?
Well, the beautiful thing about fish is that when you look at feed conversion ratios and even protein utilization, a lot of other livestock, I guess, between birds and mammals, they have a higher protein demand than tilapia. So the highest protein requirement any tilapia feed would be about 40 to 45%, and that's within the juvenile stage. If you're growing them out, then they only require about a 30% feed. And you find that their conversion of feed into meat is almost 1-to-1, depending on how great your system is. In our system here, I observe a conversion ratio of about 1 to 1.7. So that's even less than 2. So that is for every gram of feed, they gain almost 2 grams of gain almost 2 grams of, for every gram of feed, they gain almost a full gram of meat. So compared to other livestock where you have feed conversion ratios of 1:5 or 1:10, I think, when it comes to cattle, the fish have a very low food conversion ratio, and therefore making them a lot more affordable to grow as a protein source than any other livestock. If we assume that feed costs are about the same for all animals being cultivated, then that would make fish probably one of the cheaper things you could consider growing.
And not to mention other things like minerals and omega-6 in tilapia, which is what we need. So it's definitely a complete nutrition food item that we should be growing. I don't think, do we have any more questions? We have some very useful resources from Laura, which we will share. I don't think, does anybody else have any more questions? Maya, can you stop sharing? I want to share our website. So if we have no more questions, I wanted to share, this is our last webinar for the summer. We had a very good June, and Maya is our last for July. And so we will be having a Women in Caribbean Aquaculture Network. So we'd really like anyone who is interested in joining our Women's Network to sign up to our website and our newsletter so that we can give you that information. Olive asks, where in Jamaica can I get that info? So Olive, you would definitely have to go to the National Fisheries Authority or the Ministry of Agriculture for that.
I see a question here from Anne-Marie about how long it takes to set up a system and have it running. I guess it depends on your access to materials, but once you have everything that you need for a system in place and you have water in that system, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to get a decent enough colony of bacteria in your system to help with that conversion from ammonia to nitrates, which is the most critical part of running an aquaponics system. So once you do have a system that is in place and stocked with water, it takes you about 3 weeks to get it cycled. And then after that, you could pretty much start introducing things. You should expect, of course, that your plants would not respond as well in the beginning, not until you get a high enough buildup of the nitrates that they need. But yeah, anywhere from 3 weeks to a month would be all that you need to have it up and running if you want to have a demo center set up once you have everything that you need. And have I researched rotating drum systems? I mean, I've researched it. Don't know if I can afford it here, but you know, we know. Yeah, it's more of a affordability question at this point. My email address is at the top of the chat, but I could type it again here.
Yeah, Olive, I don't know if it's at Twickenham Park, but if you look on the website, I think you'll be able to see it's the National Fisheries Authority in Jamaica. Is anyone here from Jamaica? I don't think so. We did have one person, but I think that's where you'll be able to find the information in Jamaica. Otherwise, we are going to be putting together a list of resources. So if you subscribe to our newsletter, I'll put it in the chat. You'll be able to see, we know Jamaica, we know St. Lucia, and if anybody else is here, please put in the chat, if in the Caribbean, if you know where you can get information on aquaponics. That would be really appreciated. So is there, oh, thank you, Laura. Thank you for sending more information. So we'll also put that in the newsletter. So is there any other question? You can find more about Maya on our newsletter. We also have a series on thefishsite.com about women in Caribbean aquaculture, where Maya also has a feature. So definitely go there. And we're going to be having more of these in the future. So please join us. Thank you, Dean, for putting that. Dean has just put into the chat the National Fisheries Authority. And
I don't know, Oliver's asking about shrimp production. I'm not sure if you mean shrimp in aquaponics or just shrimp in general in Jamaica. If it's aquaponics you're asking about, it's possible. Definitely. As to Jamaican availability, hopefully this link might be able to help you.
yes, we'll have to, I don't know, we'd have to talk about that in another point, but right now you don't do shrimp, right? It's just tilapia.
Not yet, no, not yet. But we're working on it.
Okay. Maria says, I learned in a special help program organized by the Bahamas government, who got special expertise by the Israelis to assist the Caribbean. It was good.
Is that with the Blue Ocean people? I think I heard about that.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. This has been a great summer webinar session, and I hope you will continue to follow us and follow our journey as we continue to grow aquaculture and highlight aquaculture in the Caribbean. We really appreciate your support, and I hope you enjoy this. So thank you, everybody, and please stay in touch. Thank you, Maya.